let me just start by asking you this. Like, what motivated you to start eating this way?
Essentially, I was on 8 medicines for my diabetes, and like the last one was where I was getting on the like short acting insulin, where you had to like check your sugar and then go off of a chart, and that's how much insulin you had to give yourself. And then what it was is I started doing and at that point, like I got onto like the local hospital had the weight loss thing where it was the shakes and bars and that type of stuff. So I lost about 30 pounds doing that. But then that was just so hard and so just didn't like doing it because like if you had a bad day, then your next day you had to like eat a shake or a bar. Like it was just so monotonous. And then too, I was just grumpy all the time too because you were just eating a little bit it was just calorie restrictions with a shake and a bar and stuff like that. And so I put some of the weight back on, and then actually it was my wife who kind of doing the same thing. And then her doctor's actually a plant-based doctor and kind of showed us then like, okay, if you really want to do this, like watch, she gave us a list of videos and books to read, and that's kind of how we did it. And then it worked out where I went to like that week, I think, when she had her doctor's appointment, like she signed me up for the men's night out, like at our hospital, and they had plant-based. And then from there, they kind of told you about, a lot of it was like the Mediterranean diet. So, but just how to kind of transition and went through everything. But at least it's funny, like, because then I didn't know, like, I just thought you ate salads all day and every day. So I actually, like, it's that stuff you don't know, like, because I was like, oh yeah, like rice and potatoes and stuff so I kind of knew I could do it at least at that point because I just thought you ate salads. That's all I thought you did. And then it was almost probably a year to the day. Like this week probably was when we signed up for the meal plans.
Oh, cool. That's interesting timing. Very cool.
Day had to have been pretty close. And I know Easter was like the first one where we were really like, whoa, this stuff's amazing. And then, awesome. So I think for like the first month or so, though, like before we signed up, we just tried it on our own and kind of muddled around with veggie spaghetti, and that just, we didn't do very well with that at all. So, and then after a while, she found you guys through something. I don't know how she actually found it. And then, we signed up for the plans and been doing it ever since. And it's been really one of those where it's easy, but yet you still have to work at it. So there's quite a bit to it. So.
Awesome. Well, I really liked hearing about your story, and that's quite the transition that you've made then over the past year.
Yeah. So actually in the last year I've lost, because I came back, so I was about 255 and I was down to like 189. So I'm below 200 now for the first time since freshman year of college.
Wow. Okay. Right here. Give me a high five right here. Awesome. Yeah. So how long were you type 2 diabetic?
14 years. So I was 30 when I got diagnosed.
Wow.
And I was I was that guy that, like, in all the books you read, like Furman's and Barnard's, like, I was that guy in there that, whereas just every year you kept putting on a little more weight, you would be on a different medicine. I was just figuring it out. Like, I was on 8 medicines when I finally got off everything. And then 2, I think there's been 3 or 4 where I was on it, then she took me off it for something different and things like that.
So that's a lot of work. I mean, just being on that many medicines, that's work in itself. So what was your diet like? For all of those years? What were you eating on a day-to-day basis? Like, what did breakfast, lunch, and dinner look like? Meat and potatoes.
Yeah. So actually there for a while, like breakfast was ham, egg, and cheese on toast, like every day. And and even then, to cut down, I would have 1 as opposed to 2 of those sandwiches. So that was my breakfast for quite a bit of it. And then, lunch would usually just be whatever leftovers, which was usually smoked meat from the night before. Cause like I actually have 2 smokers. So like I was always smoking something up that it was just, yeah, I didn't like any veggies at all. There was, even if we went out, like there'd be times where I would like, no, just give me double potatoes as opposed to the vegetables.
So you were one of those guys who would just not eat veggies.
No, none. Yeah. And the only ones I would eat would be potatoes, corn, and peas. But then when you go through diabetic class, they would tell you those are the worst three vegetables you can eat. And so
that was off the table.
Yeah. So that was the hard part, because even, through the diabetic stuff, that's the worst things you can do. So
that's right. So no wonder you thought it was just going to be salads,
like, yeah, because I could eat a salad, but even that, it was usually with cheese and ranch dressing and eat all that. So
yeah, the lettuce is just a carrier for all of those other things,
Exactly, yeah.
So did you know, like when you were eating that way and you were diabetic and you're taking all this medicine, did you know that there was a correlation between what you ate and how many medicines that you were on? Like, was that in your radar at all, or did you just not know?
It was that thing of I knew, but after a while, I just didn't know how to change it, though. That was the thing. Like, I mean, I always knew that, like, obviously it was something you ate, but you always just figured it was the candy bar or the whatever, ice cream and things like that. Like, I never once thought it was meat and dairy and all that. It was always just candy and, like, the bad stuff you're not supposed to have.
Okay.
And that's, I never once thought like it was meat or dairy, like what I know now.
Right.
I knew like eating wasn't getting me anywhere, but it's that hard part of like you have to eat. So I don't know what else you can do. That's the hard part.
Exactly. Yes. And that's why, like for me, when I quit drinking, it was very easy because I just did not drink anymore. Like, but with eating, you have to eat. Like that's like not eating isn't an option. So that's when people are like, okay, well, I have to eat. So what the hell do I do? So I think that makes it very different. So when you learned about, the connection between, diet and your health and you were playing around with changing how you ate, was that something that made you nervous? Were you hesitant? Were you scared? Like, where were you at when you knew like, okay, I'm going to have to change this?
I was wasn't hesitant because it was kind of a thing of like, well, nothing else worked, so let's just try it. Mm-hmm. But I definitely got frustrated there for a while because I've always liked to cook, and there was a lot of times like I didn't know how to cook with this stuff. Especially when we started batching, like my wife started doing all the batching at first, and and some of the foods, especially at first, I was like, well, I don't know what this even is. Like I had no clue, and then some of the answers like, oh, well, what's a lentil? Well, it's just a legume. Like, okay, that didn't explain anything, but and I had a lot of that where I just didn't know what this stuff was. I had no clue what it tasted like. I remember one of the first meals we had through the Clean Food Dirty Girl was like stuffed acorn squash with lentils. And I'm like, I had no clue what any of it was.
Wow.
Okay,
Isn't that amazing?
Just try it. And, like it was fine. And I was like, okay. And yeah, that's the thing. Like, and yeah, there was one time where I was like almost in tears because I was like, I just don't know what any of this stuff is. So I always had like anxiety, I guess. Mm-hmm. Like even coming home from work, like, okay, what are we having tonight? Like, am I going to, what's this going to do? Because it was, I never had any of this stuff.
So this was like brand spanking new to you.
Yeah. And I've eaten more like just different foods that I never would have guessed that, like eggplant and things like that never have had before. Because my parents didn't cook. Like, we just never, even growing up, we never had that stuff.
That was going to be my next question. Actually, you beat me to it. So, growing up, what kind of foods did you eat growing up? What did and did your mom cook, or was it more like going out to eat? How was that for you?
No, my mom always cooked, but most of it was a lot of fried foods here and there, and then a lot of it was like your comfort foods, pot roast with mashed potatoes, over noodles and things like that. We had a lot of that, or like lasagnas and that type stuff. And my mom cooks very basic, so there was never we never had taco night or anything, like it was just meat and potatoes.
Is there a like standard American diet type of?
Yeah. From back in the day too. There was no Chinese food or, like none of that. It was just your very basic down home cooking type thing.
Yeah. Pot roast.
The other hard part, when you go to college, we had all you can eat buffet, and then you live on your own in an apartment where you're just fixing whatever was easy enough that you can eat out of a pan. So it was macaroni and cheese with sausage, and you were just eating it out of the pan, so you didn't have to do dishes later.
Pretty typical. I was actually doing that too, but it was vegan macaroni and cheese. But I think every college student goes through that. But it was like, it was a continuation of what you grew up on, and that's because that's what you know. And that's the thing. I mean, I think so many people are in your same boat of like, you just didn't know. You didn't know what these foods were. You didn't know that these foods were, able to keep you healthy. And so many, I hear that so often. And I think that transition to eating this way is, especially like the first year, as you can probably attest to, is like so crazy because you're starting to feel better and your whole idea of food and what's possible just like explodes.
Yeah, it's amazing though. Like some of the food that I've eaten that never would have guessed. Just like today, I had like chickpeas where I put some buffalo sauce over with, made wraps out of that, and it was like, oh, this is great, and
see,
never would have had before.
Yep, and that's the thing. People think that eating this way, and I always get kind of a chuckle when I hear people think, oh, well, you must be really limited in what you can eat. And I'm like, actually, it's the opposite, because there's so many more things you can eat. Like the amount of beans and legumes that there are, the amount of whole grains, the amount of sauces and dressings, like it really does. You're probably eating more diverse now than you ever have.
Oh, yeah. I do notice that. And even like at work, like it's amazing. Like they'll spend a half hour trying to figure out where they want to go eat at. And they're all the same. Like it's just either a burger or a taco, and that's your choices basically.
Yeah.
They'll spend a half hour trying to figure that out. And then where I'm like, well, I got, I've had like last week, I had the soup with a baked potato and gumbo and things like that. And I was like, yeah, I'm having gumbo with baked potato in there and everything else. And yeah, it's kind of funny just how good some of that stuff is that I've never had before in my whole life.
Awesome. So yeah, that is like so amazing. So let me ask you about that. Like when you first transitioned, have you noticed the food getting tastier over time? Like, because usually when people transition, like it takes a minute for their taste buds to kind of adapt, because there isn't that like rush of fat, sugar, and salt with everything they're eating. So did you go through that initial kind of change in your taste buds?
Yeah, because I know the first few weeks, everything was just okay, I guess, or it was like, well, it's edible, like, and then
yeah.
It actually wasn't until the Easter week, it was the bread pudding. Like, that was the first meal I think that we had that we were just blown away by. That was like, wow, this is just amazing. And it was one we weren't even going to make because we were both like, well, no, like the regular bread pudding. Well, what's this? I can't imagine this is going to be any better. And so, but we ended up making it. It was the best stuff we ever had. And that was kind of the first time we really, where your taste buds changed. And now I really can tell my taste buds change. Like the sweets don't even. It's like today they had cupcakes at work and didn't even. Yeah, I've had conversations while I was sitting beside the cupcakes and never even, there's cupcakes, but.
So did you ever think, like, if you would, okay, let's say 5 years ago, you were watching yourself have this conversation with me, like, would you believe that this is now how you eat in your life?
No, and I've said that a lot, that way, I just be like, trust me, I never figured I would ever eat this way. Yeah, never, because like I said, like, having two smokers, and I used to be on like a bunch of smoking websites, like, yeah, they made fun of vegans all the time. Like there was nothing. Yeah, I never would have guessed this way. But I guess at the same time, though, I never figured I'd be some middle-aged guy on 8 medicines, though, either. So that's
good point.
Thing too. That
yeah, good point. So what, like, okay, so let's say somebody's watching this video, some guy, and he knows that maybe he has to make some adjustments to his diet, but he's feeling unsure of it. What advice would you give him?
Make sure what you're eating is good, like, and good food. Like, I guess that's what's made it easy, is a lot of this, like, your food that we've eaten is very good. And because I noticed, like I said, when we first started, like, eating veggie spaghetti, or, if you are just eating a basic salad all the time, like, it would just get boring. And so that's where, like, what's been nice is that we've had so much variety where it's made it really easy. And some of it is just, it's just a matter of doing it, I guess. Like, I know it's not easy, because, like, I definitely struggled at first, but it's something that I do now, and it's pretty amazing after a while. But it is just, you have to work your way into it. That's for sure. There is it took me a couple months to transition, so don't try to do it overnight. Like, I would start just meatless Mondays, and then slowly, and slowly just bring it down my portions of meat and stuff, and then finally.
So that's how you did it. You kind of, like, transitioned. You kind of took baby steps and did it kind of one step at a time.
Yeah, I kind of did, like, the Mediterranean diet at first.
Yep.
It's kind of how we tried it, and then just after a while, I just quit doing it. So.
Yeah. And I think that's good advice. I mean, I think that it's good to, if the food doesn't taste good, like, there is, and I always, like, am cautious about that, though, because in the beginning, like, the food isn't going to taste good as, like, that drive-through. Like, it's not going to taste like that, but hang in there, and then the food will taste good. And finding good recipes that have, like, a lot of spices and textures, like, that's so important, because if the food is boring and it's just always the same thing, like, it's not gonna last.
Yeah, and that's what's really helped us, is that just a lot of the food is really good. And you are right, like, and that's what also can be a little frustrating, though, too, is when we're first starting off, and you see your spice list, and you're like, and you're putting 10 different spices in there, like, in a dish, and that can, that's where I know, like, where I got a little frustrated, because, I was used to salt, pepper, garlic, and maybe a little bit of whatever seasoning, and then, but now I'm using Carmine and stuff I've never heard of, and that's where, and I've kind of liked doing that now, that it's been pretty nice as far as that goes. But that definitely takes some time, though, to get used to seasoning things up, though, the way, so they do taste good.
Great point, because when you're used to using salt and pepper, if you see a recipe that has 6 different spices that you've never used, you're probably thinking, well, what's the point? Is it really, like, oh man, I can see how that, and I kind of take that for, I don't think about that aspect of it, because I've been doing this for so long. But yes, I can totally see how just, like, even something like spices can be really intimidating and frustrating in the beginning. So I'm really glad that you said that, and it's an excellent point.
And there's a lot of different spices that before you do this, you never hear about, like nutritional yeast and umi plum vinegar and things like that I've never even heard of before. And now you're, like, putting half cups of stuff in there, like, that's what was. And that's where I do know, like, where I did get frustrated at first, was just getting used to all those different spices and how to cook with that.
And what about the grocery shopping? So I know that your wife is doing this too. So did you guys kind of do this together and, like, go grocery shopping together and cooking together? Or was it a joint kind of effort, or how did that work?
No, actually, we cook total opposites. So we don't cook together at all. Okay. She's the type, she has to measure every little thing, and I don't measure anything, so we can't do it. And then she works nights, weekends. She's a nurse, so, like, a lot of times, depending on how her shift works out, like, one or the other will go grocery shopping. And that's one thing we've never been good at together, is cooking together.
So she cooks and then you cook, like, you guys.
Yeah, and a lot of times what we've been doing lately is I've been batching over the weekends, and then she'll cook the meals during the week.
But you know what? That is like, that's teamwork though. That's beautiful because you've figured out your pace and your groove with that, and you're both contributing and you're both benefiting from it. So I think that that's awesome so that really is doing it together, just not at the same time.
Yeah.
Now that you've been eating like this for a year, could you imagine going back to how you ate before? Like, is that even kind of like in your mind at all, or can you not imagine?
No. Some of it's that simple stuff where you'll see that commercial for whatever, and then you'll think about it, but then you're always like, well, wait, remember after eating something like that, and just how bad you would feel after some of that. So, and it is nice that like now you can eat a big plate of food and not feel that way. You don't have that big gut ache after eating all the time, even though you're eating a lot more food.
Right.
That's the biggest thing, is like it doesn't just weigh you down. Like, because I've never had to do that where you have to unbutton your button and just sit back and do nothing. Like, you do feel pretty good after eating.
Yeah.
And it is amazing how big some of the portions you can eat, as long as my parents one time, like, I had this giant plate of food in there. It's like, you're losing weight and that's what you're eating. I'm like, yeah, it's not a lot of calories here.
That's right. It's nutrient dense, not calorie dense. Some of the salads that I eat, it'll take me a half an hour to eat a salad because I'll have a salad in such a big bowl. I'm just like, the amount, and people are always shocked at like the amount of food that I eat because I love to eat. I'm constantly eating, but it's like, if you're eating the right things, man, you can, and it's good, So this is, because you were type 2 diabetic, I want to hit on kind of how that is going. Like, if you were able to get off some of your medications, lower some of your medications. And so kind of an update with that.
My A1C actually went from like 8.9 to 6.4. And so it dropped 2 points in 3 months. And then from there, it's really stayed. So like the next time it went up like to 6.5, and then she took me off one more med. Mm-hmm. That was in October. So, and then the last time, so from October to just a couple weeks ago when I had my last labs, it actually dropped down, but I got off two more medicines. So it's on like the Trulicity and the Glyperzide, which actually lower your sugar. So I was getting all these sugar lows, and then so I just kind of got off them on my own, and it actually went down another 10th or so. And so, so right now, and then this last time, she actually took me off another med. So she's kind of a little more on board now. She's like super excited, even though like at first, I don't think she knows what it is, but like she was just super excited about it actually. So I'm down to now just metformin. So I was on like almost being on full blown insulin, down to metformin. And even that, like she said, next time, everything's still going well, she might take me off that. So
yes, woohoo! That's so awesome. Good.
That's where like I don't know. It's like very rare before in the years like going to the doctor where you ever got good news, and like now you're getting like it's like exciting to actually see the doctor because it's like proving them something like that it can be done. With my job, I do like orthotics and prosthetics, so I see. Half the people I see are diabetics that are about to lose their foot, and about to do this with bad, so I see the 20 years of being sick before you die. And that was some of the other part that scared me into, like, I was going on that path also. So that was one thing that enough to wake me up, I guess, to start changing something at least. So.
For sure. And wow, how far you've come. And, a year, it's a relatively short amount of time compared to how long you were, on so many meds and not feeling well. And, a year is it's like, it goes by so fast. And to think like just how far you've come in that year and how your body has responded and is able to kind of bring itself back into balance and keep getting off from medication. That just must be so like exciting for you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
that's
definitely.
So cool.
That's why I emailed you guys. I just couldn't have been any happier. And even like when I left the doctor's office, I was just in shock, made sure called Dora, called my mom and everything, I was just so excited that, that geez, like I'm down to one medicine.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're right. Most people like fear the doctor and just hate going to the doctor because they don't want to get more bad news, because when people were on the trajectory that you were on, you know, things don't get better. Things will keep getting worse. Like that's just the body's natural progression for like, you know, degenerative illness. You know, you just keep getting worse. And so to be able to say, yeah, I went to the doctor and I'm not like afraid of going anymore because it's good news, like that in itself, like what a blessing.
Yeah, it's amazing though when you actually get good news from your doctor. That's for sure. It's a different feeling, that's fair.
And so here you were, type 2 diabetic, always told that, well, you can't have potatoes or peas or corn, and that's like not the way to deal with it. And now here you are eating whole plant foods and eating potatoes and corn and peas. And so, you know, how do you feel about that? Like, does that frustrate you at all to think like, okay, well, I was told like this information that just wasn't really correct?
I've never tried to like blame the medical, but then there is sometimes where it is like, how you even said it, like, geez, like if the diabetic educators knew what I eat, like they would crap themselves, like, because it is just like I eat a ton of carbs, and because like in the diabetic class they tell you to eat like a half a baked potato with, you know, like, and that's all you're allowed to eat. And like I eat oatmeal with peas and corn and mushrooms in the morning, and then like a lot of times for the soups I'll make like a baked potato or two and then dump the soup over for like my lunch. That's usually what I eat a lot for lunch, and everything has gotten better. Like, and it is total opposite of what they say. That's what's hard is this, you know, where you find out like it's fat that was within your cells that was causing the diabetes, not so much the carbs that you eat. And that's like some of that part has been frustrating. And even I know like with my doctor, like a few times, like, you know, when I told her I wasn't taking my cholesterol med, she's like, well, the computer will keep beeping at me if you're not on a cholesterol med, because it's all set up in their system. You know, if you're diabetic, you have to be on this and this and this. And
so you were on cholesterol meds and you're off your cholesterol meds now?
Yeah. Well, last cholesterol was 102, so I just...
Yeah. You know, then at that point, it's like, what's the point? You've definitely done your homework. You educated yourself about it. Like, it sounds like you really went in because you were ready and you were committed to it, even though you were frustrated. So I really commend you. I have a lot of respect for you and your process. And I just really thank you for sharing it with me, because I just loved hearing about your story. And I love that you're a dude. So I hope that lots and lots of dudes watch this and get inspired to start dabbling in this transition. And like you said, it doesn't have to happen overnight. You know, like baby steps are good. It's good, because I think that a lot of people, it's a big change. Like, you're taking care of yourself. You are taking responsibility for your health and for your life, and that is really empowering.
Yeah, it is very empowering. Everything I've kind of learned about that, like I know more about nutrition than what I ever did going through school. But yeah, it is nice though to know everything that you know about, like what the power of plants does, I guess, you know, like.
And you're feeling it and you're living it and you are experiencing it firsthand. And so, and you know, people can read about it all they want, but until they actually try it and go into it and do it, they won't be like really, really living it and experiencing it. So I think that you're just kick-ass, and I would love an update from you when you get off your metformin, because I have no doubt that will happen.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping, a few more months. So
yeah, awesome. High fives. Bye.
Bye.